This edition of Italy TV is sponsored by DOLCE VITA, extra virgin olive oil. And Cheerio chopped tomatoes.
For our segment People, we'll have a yummy talk with Johnny Meatballs. Let's have a close look at the John Calandra American Institute. A delicious Italian recipe from Risotteria Melotti. Stefano Albertini will entertain us with a film review. We'll celebrate the 90th birthday of Joseph Tusiani. Let's start with Johnny Meatballs.
My name's Johnny Meatballs. I'm from Woodridge, New Jersey, and I'm a street vendor. I sell meatballs all around Jersey. I grew up in an Italian-American household. My grandmother, my mother, it was always meatballs every Sunday. And it kind of was a natural thing for me to sell meatballs because that's what I knew best. Okay, got your meatball. You want any ricotta? No? Just plain? There you go, my big boy. You want something to drink? Okay. So my recipe for my meatballs, it's kind of a combination of my both grandmothers and my mom's. And I got my own little twists in there, my own little touches. I gotta type something in the office, okay, Chris? You eat your meatballs. I started my Johnny Meatballs business right around 2008. Right around that period, it was kind of a meatball explosion in America. Right after, cupcakes and burgers came the whole meatball thing. There were quite a few meatball cooks popping up and meatball restaurants, of course, Meatball Shop in New York City. One of my first gigs was actually in Philadelphia. I had a little meatball and gravy competition with a gal by the name of Lorraine. She had written a book called Gravy Wars. And this was the first time I was out in the streets with the public and having the public try my food in that way. And from there, I fell in love with the idea of being out in the streets. I think that when you are a street vendor selling your food outside, in the elements, rain, snow, you name it, that's really the best way to connect with your public, with the people. And every time folks come to my stand, I want to give them an experience, like they're home with their family, feeling very comfortable. That's what it's all about to me. There has to be something that sets you apart from everyone else. So for me, it was a natural thing to create a character. And that's what Johnny Meatballs is. It's a character and it's a brand. And it comes with t-shirts that say "Got Balls" on them, funny phrases like that, and Meatball King of New Jersey. I make signs and banners. I do a lot of my marketing via Facebook and Twitter and YouTube.
Every Sunday's when I make yummy meatballs, oh so nice. Take a gravy with braciole and the garlic and the spice. Hey, I'm making meatballs over here.
I have a lot of haters, as I call them, and stalkers, and people that want to keep me down and say bad things about me, because what happened was I received a nice level of notoriety by going on to a reality show on VH1, made by the producers of Jersey Shore. So right off the bat, people had preconceived notions about me that I was this wild kind of party animal that was promiscuous and violent and engaged in not so wholesome behavior. The idea that all young Italian Americans are these crazy people, it's not true. You take a group of young people and put them in a shore house down the Jersey Shore, pay their way, and give them booze and girls and whatever. It's gonna be a wild time. Doesn't matter if it's Italian American or Puerto Rican, Irish, Greek, Japanese, it doesn't matter. I am here to kind of change that perception. I'm not a young kid, but I'm not an old man either. I'm kind of like in the middle. I want to be the guy to bridge the gap between the real old generation and the young generation and kind of represent that everyman, that regular Joe.
Let's see what's happening around the city.
So the Calandra Institute was founded in 1979 as the Italian American Institute to Foster Higher Education. It was named the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute in 1986 after the death of the Senator John D. Calandra, who was instrumental actually in getting the institute up and running. In the last 7 years, we've instituted a few other things to help those three major platforms, and that is through book publication. We revamped a little bit our TV program Italics. We have expanded significantly our public programming, and in 2007 or 8 we did our first annual conference, in the sense that for the last 6 years we've been doing an annual conference in April. We have also made greater connections with universities in Italy. We've always had the CUNY Italy Exchange, which is a unique program where students from Italian universities can come here to the United States, to the CUNY system, and our students can go there. It's a one-on-one, so it's fairly easy to negotiate administratively. Of the numerous things of which we can be very proud, there are two things we can boast with our chest out. One is that we are the largest institute of this kind dedicated to the study of Italians outside of Italy. We're the largest of its kind in the Western world, as far as I know. The other thing is that we have probably, for an institute of this type, the largest library around. We have 4 distinct collections that comprise 21,000 volumes, approximately. We won a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation to engage in a 3-day workshop in their center, at their center in Bellagio, Italy. And there were basically 8 Americans, including myself and Dr. Fred Gardefar, a distinguished professor, and 9 people from Italy. And the idea to engage with Italian professors of American studies and to bring over those of us who are engaged on a daily basis in Italian American studies, so that we can create a dialogue between the two countries with regard to American studies, and more specifically, Italian American studies.
My position here is one of the most challenging positions I've ever had in my 35-plus year career in academia. Not only am I responsible for creating courses and working with students at the university level, I also work with the community. What we create, whether it's a conference or a symposium or a publication, has got to have ramifications, and it's got to have resonance in the streets. If the people are not reading it, it's not enough that the academic community reads whatever it is we produce. People have got to read it. A lot of people believe that Italian American culture will die after this next generation or 2 generations, but what people fail to realize, it keeps reinventing itself. And so it's going to be an ongoing process of studying this. So not only do we study, but we do reports on what people have studied. We try to encourage professors to come and do their research here. So we are, I think, both a think tank I also see us as a kind of incubator for cultural and intellectual thought in Italian American culture.
I'm responsible for a number of different activities. One of them is conducting research. My expertise is folklore, vernacular, cultural expressions. The most important thing, or the culmination of everything that we do, are our annual conferences. We're now in our 6th year, and we are presenting in April, at the end of April, a conference on organized crime. The reason that the Calandra Institute is doing it is, of course, that the mafia, in its historic and contemporary manifestations in Italy, as well as in the United States, has been tied to Italians and Italian Americans. So it's right that the Calandra Institute take a look at this topic and not be afraid of exploring this topic in fear that Italian Americans have too long been tarred by the brush of organized crime. It's our role to step up and to seriously look at this topic. The idea is that, in this case, Italian Americans are not any one thing. They are a diversity of things, and even those histories are problematic. Philip Canestraro has presented on fascism and anti-fascism among Italian Americans. We've looked at the ways in which Italian Americans have been characterized by race and how race has figured significantly in the ways in which Italian Americans have been viewed and with the way they viewed themselves. So our job here is we're a research institute, and our job is to explore in thoughtful way the various manifestations of Italian American identity and history.
Part of the Calandra Institute is the television aspect, which is Italics. I'm the producer, correspondent, and editor of the program. It's important for Italian Americans and for Americans for many reasons. It's important for Italian Americans, obviously, because if they want to tap into their Italian heritage or their Italian American heritage, but also for Americans because the country is composed of so many different ethnicities that, and Italian culture, as well as all of the other cultures, have such a big part of what America is, that it's important for Americans to understand various aspects of its culture, of which Italian American is one.
Hi, this is Haley. Let's talk Italian food. Enjoy.
My name is Maristella Innocenti. I'm from Tuscany. I have been in New York 15 years and became a chef about 1 year after I got in New York City. I arrived in New York in 1999, and I started working with my sister at her restaurant in the East Village. And that's how I started cooking for a restaurant, because I never cooked for a restaurant before. I was her chef for about 8 years. I heard from a friend of ours, also friend with Gianmaria Melotti. They were looking for a person to manage the restaurant, run the restaurant, possibly also help a couple of young guys from Verona that were sent by the Melotti family here to actually build and open the restaurant. I spoke with Gianmaria on Skype, and I had my first job interview with him. I accepted immediately the job after, of course, Gianmaria spoke with the guys, Alberto and Davide, that were here already. I fell in love with their project. Their project was to open a small risotto place that would serve the rice that is actually grown by the Melotti family. I like to cook with classic ingredients, with very traditional way, but I also like to experiment. You will see in our menu, we also have something a little bit different, like an orange and crab meat risotto, where you find, a citrus with seafood. It's not that I invented anything new, but it's definitely an unusual flavor for risotto. When we were studying the menu for the Risotteria Melotti in New York City, of course, we wanted to follow mostly the menu of the Risotteria Melotti back in Isola della Scala, Verona. Our Risotteria Melotti here in New York City is 100% gluten-free, and as for what I heard, it's the only restaurant in New York City that is. And that makes us also very proud. We cook everything with rice, everything with rice flour, and we also have desserts that are magnificent. I think I've done risotto with almost anything that is available on the market. The strangest risotto I've done, one has been with rhubarb and calamari. And it was pretty funny because I bought rhubarb where in Italy I've never seen rhubarb. So I bought this rhubarb and I had no idea on what to do. I chopped it, I boiled it, I sauteed it, I did everything I could do. I didn't like it until I pureed the rhubarb. So I got this weird pink puree and I tasted it. It was, kind of citrusy. So it went well with fish. And the other one was with fiddlehead ferns that I definitely want to repeat here at the Risotteria Melotti. And that was probably the best tasting risotto I've made. Today, we're going to show you a risotto called risotto all'isolana. That is the most traditional risotto in Isola della Scala. It's made with pork. So we take pork loin and pork belly and we grind it. We take a little pot or big pot, depending on how many guests we want to serve. And we put some olive oil. We add the meat with some herbs and some butter. We stir it, we toast a little bit, we cooked a little bit the meat before we add the rice. After that, we add the rice that we like to use our vialone nano, the traditional rice in Verona. We stir the rice with the meat, adding the broth just to cover, and keep stirring, adding some cheese, of course, some grated Parmigiano or Grana Padano. We keep adding the broth until the rice is cooked at your taste. When we serve it, we like to sprinkle some Parmigiano or Grana Padano mixed with some ground cinnamon.
Check out Italian Genius.
Uberto Pasolini's last film is entitled Still Life, that, as many of you know, in Italian is translated as Natura Morta. But even in the Italian release, the film kept the English title. It's a British film with British actors and an Italian director. I would say that this film is an experiment of poetry into film. And it's the poetry of daily life. It's the poetry of daily life of a public officer, John May, who happens to have a very interesting, if strange job. He has to find the relatives of dead people who died without having any connection, and the city is taking care of their funeral, and namely he is taking care of their funeral, and of their estate, normally very small, if at all existent. But John May pursues this job that he has with patience, humanity, and compassion in a way that is quite unlikely in the modern world. And as you would expect, he ends up losing his job because his presence is no longer deemed necessary by the administration. The film has some aspects, again, that are pure poetry in the reconstruction of the humble, seemingly eventless life of John May. in the daily routine that gets repeated day after day after day, and has a very unpredictable and dreamlike, I'd dare to say almost Fellinian, conclusion. Despite the fact that it talks about dead people with no relatives, Still Life, it's not a sad film, or it's not a morbid film either. But it's a film that will inspire you and will make you think about the meaning of death and life in a completely different way. Thank you.
Hi, this is Lauren, and this is where we will go. Ciao.
Siamo alla Columbus Foundation per celebrare un compleanno molto ma molto importante.
Beh, lei trovo buona a 90, insomma, infatti in Italia non dicono, io ho detto non dite più anni, contateli in lustri, per i 5 anni è un lustro, quindi dite che io, lustro è anche luce, quindi io la mia età è 18 splendori.
Celebrarlo in questo posto, la Columbus Citizen Foundation, in mezzo a questo mondo italo-americano, però anche in mezzo a tanti pugliesi, che alcuni sono venuti apposta dalla Puglia, cosa vuol dire?
Beh, io devo dire sono molto contenta dell'idea che abbiano scelto di farlo qui alla Columbus Citizen Foundation, perché veramente è da tempo il luogo dove gli italoamericani si sono ritrovati e hanno conservato, diciamo, un legame speciale con l'Italia, pur essendo perfettamente integrati nella realtà americana. E la presenza dei pugliesi è veramente commovente, perché è una folta delegazione che è venuta per presentare 2 nuovi libri sull'opera di Joseph Tusiani, ma al tempo stesso per manifestare l'affetto che veramente nutrono nei confronti di questa persona eccezionale che ha portato negli Stati Uniti un pezzo della Puglia e del loro paese.
Well, he's an Italian American of great culture. He's a successful American poet in the English language. This is really amazing. But he also has great talent in Italian, Latin, his own dialect. He's a wonderful man of great talent. Poet, translator, humanist, all the good things we identify with good Italian culture.
Ho saputo che nella mia città natia, la scuola elementare Barilla, che io frequentai, una scuola fondata dal fascismo, che frequentai nella quinta elementare, i bambini hanno ideato il nuovo calendario del 14 a me dedicato, con loro commoventi, ingenui disegni, ogni disegno ispirato a qualche mia opera, e quindi mi ha commosso, insomma, questi bambini.
Traduttore, ha tradotto per la prima volta le liriche di Michelangelo, tramite la sua traduzione ha conosciuto poi Kennedy, il presidente Kennedy, che lo aveva invitato poi alla Casa Bianca, dove oggi uno può andare alla biblioteca Library of Congress e sentire Tusiani recitare sia le sue che le poesie di Michelangelo e così via.
Un momento importante, questa è una grande celebrazione, un suo compleanno come questo, 90 anni. Un altro momento importante che mi ricorda e poi...
Quando penso ai miei 90 anni, sono 3 le cose di cui sono orgoglioso. E se avessi fatto soltanto queste 3 cose, direi di non essere vissuto invano. Ho fatto conoscere la poesia di Michelangelo al mondo anglosassone. Prima non lo conoscevano come poeta. Per cui quando incontrai per esempio il presidente Kennedy mi riconobbe perché era stato recensito il merito della mia traduzione il giorno prima nel Times, il giorno dopo incontrai, veniva all'università in cerca di voti e quando fummo presentati i docenti Tusiani, are you the Michelangelo man? Il giorno prima era stato, dice I didn't know Michelangelo was a poet. E tutti si dissero questa cosa, quindi il mio libro ebbe gran successo non per il mio nome, ma per il nome di Michelangelo. Poi l'edizione britannica fu presa dall'UNESCO, distribuita tra i classi. La seconda cosa è di aver tradotto il Morgante del Pulci. Guardi, sono un 35.000 versi, come la commedia e la Gerusalemme liberata messi insieme. E no, nessuno aveva tradotto in 5 secoli, soltanto Lord Byron aveva tradotto il primo canto e si era arreso. La terza cosa tradussi l'America libera di Alfieri, mai tradotta prima, e una copia di questa traduzione fu messa sulla sede di ogni deputato e senatore dell'America. Quindi trovarono la prova che l'Italia era stata la prima a riconoscere l'indipendenza di questa nuova nazione, gli Stati Uniti. Queste sono le cose belle di cui veramente sono fiero.
Grazie.
Prego.
In the next week episode, People, the story of Rosario Procino, owner of Ribalta Pizza. A special interview to Ambassador Sebastiano Cardi. Let's have a glass of Italian wine with Fred Plotkin. Another review by Fred Gardafè. Let's remember together Rita Levi Montalcini.
This edition of Italy TV was brought to you by European Flavors, promoting organically grown fruits and vegetables in the best European tradition. And Baci Perugina Chocolates, say I love you the Italian way.